And we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our virtual double feature of The Language of Loss. And this time next year, we'll be laughing with authors Barbara Abercrombie and Jacqueline Winspear. And joining them tonight is our moderator, Monica Holloway. This event includes an audience Q&A, and to ask a question, just use the Ask a Question button at the very bottom of the screen. You can also vote for any questions you'd like for our panelists to answer. And please consider supporting our bookstore by purchasing a copy of tonight's featured books. You can just click on the green purchase button directly below the viewer screen, and it will take you to our website where you can complete your purchase. And let me briefly introduce our panelists, and then I will get out of the way and we can get the conversation rolling. Barbara Abercrombie is the author of A Year of Writing Dangerously and Kicking in the Wall, which were both chosen as best books for writers by Poets and Writers magazine. She's also the recipient of the Outstanding Instructor Award at UCLA Extension, where she teaches creative writing.
We'll explain that later.
Yeah. And Jacqueline Winspear is the author of the best-selling and award-winning Maisie Dobbs series and has published articles in numerous publications, including the Washington Post and the Daily Beast. Her standalone novel, The Care and Management of Lies, was a New York Times and national bestseller. And moderating tonight's event is Monica Holloway, the critically acclaimed author of memoirs Driving with Dead People and Cowboy and Willis. She has also served as a spokesperson for Autism Speaks, and her contributions have been recognized by the Special Needs Network. And with the introductions out of the way, I'm going to turn the screen over to our guests.
Wow, that's a lot of technology.
Okay, welcome everybody.
Hey guys.
Right? We're friends, so we'll be talking over each other. But first of all, I want to thank you for that lovely introduction. That
really
was wonderful.
sweet.
And I just want to tell everybody, and I know all three of us agree, that please order from Vroman's books anything that you need. Their website is amazing, and it's Barbara's local bookstore. And I drive from Sherman Oaks all the way over, and they have everything you can imagine there. Plenty of books, and what they don't have, they're happy to order for you, and they're just lovely. And I just want to thank them for having all three of us have read there. They've sold our books for us.
Yeah.
They have been so supportive. Barbara teaches there when there's not a giant pandemic going on. Anyway, I just want to thank you so much. And we're all the three of us are having glasses of wine. And if any of you guys want to go, we don't start an evening or end an evening, the three of us, without a glass of wine. And so here we are. We haven't seen each other in months. And please join us for a glass of wine. I've got, I'm doing Duckhorn, which is my best friend Eileen's favorite wine. And I hope it won't give me a headache. I'm very excited. All right.
Cheers. Here's
and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for being here.
For dragging yourselves away from the TV.
Yes. We're here to celebrate Barbara's book and Jackie's new book. Barbara's book, The Language of Loss, just came out on November 3rd. She had the good fortune of coming out on election day. Woo, 2020, and there it is.
I've got all my stickies on it.
No, it's tremendous. We're going to talk about this. And then and Barbara has at least 15 books written, I think 15 and going on 16, and books on writing and beautiful memoirs and some fiction, and also books on writing that just get me through my life, basically. And then this time next year, we'll be laughing. Please.
Yes.
God. If it's not the perfect title for right now is Jacqueline Winspear's new book. Jackie is the author of 15 books, the Maisie Dobbs series, which is a New York Times best-selling series. And this is her first memoir. And it's lovely. It's wonderful. And I think we're going to start by, I have so much to say to ask about both books. But first of all, we'll just spend a second saying how we met. And Barbara, do you want to say how we met? Because you were sort of the captain of the ship when we met and we figured out the date, 2004, right, Jackie?
Yeah.
Was it January 2004.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I still have one of your assignments, Monica. And when Jackie joined us, that's right.
Yes. Yes, because
Oh, I'm sure it's tremendous.
Yeah, yeah. Jackie, I got an email, 2004 from somebody in Ojai who said, well, she had one novel published, but she had a contract for more, but she was a little stuck. And I said, I'm teaching kind of a beginning class called Courage and Craft. I'm not sure this is, you already have a book published.
It was the Illuminated Writer. It was the Illuminated Writer.
But you did do Courage and Craft because I took that before I met you. We took it together, you and I.
I came to that afterwards.
Well, maybe I said you're already illuminated. You have a book published, I don't know. But and you came to class and you would do the exercises in class, and everybody in class would go, oh, because it was so amazing.
Yes. And we would faint, Jackie, literally.
And then Monica would come to class and she said, for this book, and I still have her assignment, a piece of paper. This is what you wrote, Monica. It's your assignment. And she said, oh, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a fiction. I don't know what it is. I don't know what to do.
I'm sure I had a mustache and I was sweaty.
And the only thing I ever said to you was keep writing, Monica. Just keep writing. And you
taught me how to write in many ways. You did not just say.
I think you both came into classes knowing what to do. But it was sure fun. And now all these years later, I mean, our books, we were reading, we were up in Arrowhead on our own little mini writing retreat, the three of us, and we were reading pages to each other of what you're writing now, Monica, and the books and Jackie, our books. So yeah, so this
and your books that are already out that we were just reading not last summer but the summer before last. It's so exciting.
Yeah, time's gotten funky, hasn't it? Well, that was summer.
It sure has.
Yeah,
that was
a good word.
Really, it was such a wonderful retreat, and just hanging out, writing, and then talking, and then reading, and then writing and talking. It was just
eating
and drinking.
Eating.
And I found that wonderful recipe for that lovely dish you did with the pasta and the ricotta cheese or whatever. I mean, it's just gorgeous. I was trying to be polite that evening, and I could have inhaled a lot.
We did have fun. We're going to do it again as soon as this is over.
We are going to do it again.
Yeah.
We're going to do it again. And I will say this, and then I'll leave the friendship, and we'll talk about your books. Is that we, Jackie and I reconnected at Hedgebrook in 2018, October, at Hope Edelman's retreat up on Whidbey Island, and we found out that Barbara was having a retreat in Lake Arrowhead, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so we started texting. We texted each other pictures of us, all the writers that were eating at the table, and it felt like we were all having a writing retreat.
It did feel like that. Yeah, it was at the UCLA Conference Center in Lake Arrowhead, and I got this wonderful text from you guys.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I want to talk about your books, and I'm going to start out by just reading a couple of the blurbs from Jackie and from Barbara. That are so wonderful. This first blurb I'm going to do is from, and we'll hold it up again. This time next year, we'll be laughing. I just pray we will be. But Jackie, you'll tell us about the title in a minute, and it's just a beautiful story. Anne Lamott wrote, Jackie Winspear has created a memoir of her English childhood that is every bit as engaging as her Maisie Dobbs novels. Just as rich in character and detail, history and humanity, her writing is lovely, which it is, elegant and welcoming. And then Hope Edelman wrote, a beautifully rendered, elegant work of literary architecture, joining the present to the past. Jacqueline Winspear's memoir of an English country childhood is also an homage to the remarkable parents, and you'll know when you read it why I hold my heart, whose choices and outlooks shaped her. Their stories of hardship and gratitude became hers, and hers became this unforgettable book. Hope Edelman. Lovely. And here's a couple of quotes from Barbara's book, The Language of Loss. And there's so much to talk about with both these books. This is from Abigail Thomas. Oh, what an author she is.
Yeah, I know.
So her words for Barbara are, here is a treasury of words for when there are no words. There is comfort here and there are tears, which is true because your book is so honest about loss. And then Erica Jong wrote, heavy hitters, you guys, you literary heavy hitters coming in for you. Erica Jong wrote, we are mortal creatures who love deeply. Never forget it. All great poetry is about this. And here is the anthology that proves it. Simply, beautifully, tenderly, lovingly, everyone should have at least one copy. And that's Barbara's book, and that's absolutely for sure. And I'm going to start by asking Jackie and showing you guys, if you can see, I don't think you can, the cover. It's probably looked it's backwards with the words. But Jackie, can you tell us about the photograph on the front?
I can, yeah. I look like the Incredible Sulk, don't I?
No.
I am
horrible.
I was about 3.5. No, about 3 years old, and I'm actually hop picking. I'm in the county of Kent, and I'm hop picking. It wasn't unusual to see the children hop picking near where their parents were hop picking. And generally, you know, obviously it kept the kids quiet and so on. And you would pick into something that wasn't one of the big bins. And I described the big bins in the book. But I was picking into just an old wicker basket.
I think the basket's here.
Yeah, exactly. And there's my sprig of hops. And as I was picking the hops, and you sort of get the hops off like that, this big bumblebee crawled out. I can see it as I'm sitting here. Crawled out. I went bum, and right on my lip, and stung me on the lip. And someone pulled out the stinger, because you can do that. But my lip was just starting to go really big, and which is why I look. And I was really, oh no! Some bright spark thought it was the ideal time to whip out a camera, like they do.
And did you think it would be the cover of a book? Well,
the cover has always been the, let's say, the subject of some teasing and laughter in our family. Oh, look at her, the little misery. But it was actually when my husband was looking at the photograph, the actual photograph, and he blew it up on screen. And he said, my gosh, he said, you've got loads of bruises on your arm. And I said, well, yeah, it was hard work. You get, we're outdoors, we're kids, we run around, and in fact, children would work. They wouldn't just play, they'd work. They had to contribute to the family.
And you say you were 3?
About 3.5. Yeah, when that father's taken. Yeah. Wow. And breathing in hops all day, you sleep really well.
I'm going to get myself a bunch of that for tonight.
Yeah.
Jackie, tell us about the fabulous title. This time next year, we'll be laughing.
It was something my dad used to say, and it's very much it's a saying that it's a saying, and it was an attitude of from people in the area in London where my family come from, or my parents came from, and it was an attitude, I think, that got them through the very worst of times in both the First and Second World War. But my dad would always say that when our family hit a rough patch, and there were a number of rough patches, and literally we'd be sitting there at the dinner table or something, and my parents would might be discussing something that was going on. Suddenly my dad would say, never mind, this time next year we'll be laughing. And suddenly, being a kid, you suddenly, it was almost cinematic. I could see the sun beaming through the windows, and the table would be full of all the best foods ever. And there we would be in a year, the Winspears, rolling up laughing, just holding our sides because life was so good we couldn't stop laughing. And
what a gift he gave you.
And here's the thing. What he did with that, this time next year we'll be laughing. It's as if he cast our line out into the future. And there was a grappling hook that went boom onto the rock of tomorrow. And we could pull ourselves in. We pulled ourselves into better times. And
That's
He
beautiful.
was, it was something that you held in your hand, and it always made us laugh, even if it was something, there was some disaster looming,
You're still that way, Jackie. You still have that optimism about you. That's tremendous.
Oh, I like to. And I think that's the thing. You're casting your line into the future, and this time next year we'll be laughing, and then you say it the next year and the next and the next.
I hope I didn't say it last year, but next year I do hope to be laughing.
Yeah.
But it's lovely.
Thank you for asking. My dad would be so tickled. He would be so tickled. He passed away about 8 years ago, and I just know he would be.
2012, right?
Yeah, he passed in 2012.
Oh my goodness. And I have more questions about him too. Barbara, I love your title.
It's lovely.
The Language of Loss, but this is my favorite part. Poetry and prose for grieving. This is my favorite part. And celebrating the love of your life. Tell me why you created, even though a little part of me knows, for everybody listening and watching, why did you create this book right now?
My husband died 5.5 years ago, and my way of getting through anything difficult is to read my way through it. And I wanted to read poetry about grief. I didn't have the concentration right away to read anything, to read a book. I couldn't read a book. And there were a couple of wonderful anthologies on grief, like The Art of Losing. But I found that so many of the poems were about parents or siblings or friends. And there was a very small portion of poetry about losing the love of your life, or a spouse or a partner, which is all grief is terrible, but it's a different kind of grief, because this is the person you've lived with every day. And so when I realized there wasn't such a book, I thought, I'm gonna put together the book. And in the beginning, I had just the poems of abject grief, and then I thought, and my agent suggested there'd be more of an arc to the book,
as they do.
And so then I realized the middle part, when you're grieving, and you just grit your teeth and you get through it. You're grieving, but you go back to work and you just get through it. And then the third part is when you suddenly, grief becomes like a memory of grief. And you still miss the person, and you'll always miss the person, but you're no longer actively grieving. And that's sort of, you're really, you feel you move into gratitude finally. I think that's the arc of the book, is the last poems are more of gratitude and love and healing.
And that's amazing, Barbara, because it's in 3 parts. So just as you described the arc of it, your first part is called sweeping up the heart,
which is from Emily Dickinson's.
Yeah, of course, but yes. But this idea of sweeping, like literally sweeping up your heart off the floor, or off the whatever, or off the street, or this beautiful idea of the broken heart, and your part 2 going on after, which more than a little bit about, trying to go on after, which is what you just described. And then the part 3, poetry and essays, are about turning, which is what you just described.
And that's I got Turning from Patti Smith's the excerpt from her memoir. Because she said, slowly the leaves of my turned. And and one day you think, I miss this person, but I'm okay. And life is moving on.
And so this book is for people who are going through it right now, who have gone, or it's actually, as Abigail Thomas said, everybody should have a copy.
Nice. Yes.
I think it's a lovely book to have at any time, actually, because I think reading some of the poems here, as I have been doing, and you can see I've got all these little posts, it actually, it does result in a gratitude. When I was reading, and I love that you included Auden's poem, Funeral Blues. And you know, you read that and you think, I'm filled with gratitude because, you know, I'm not in that place right now or whatever, but I know that feeling of love. And I think, so I don't think it's just to pull out when, you know, you have the funeral blues. It's
I'm glad.
Oh, no,
you
of course
said
not.
that. I'm glad you said that, because I think I can say this. I only wrote 3 pages of that book, and then the rest of it is my favorite poets. I mean, there are poets in there and poems that just
Barbara,
knock
my
me
goodness.
out every time I read it, and
C.S.
memoir.
Lewis, Mary Oliver, Donald Hall, Elizabeth Alexander, Jane Kenyon, Patti Smith, as you said, Joan Didion. I mean,
I'm in
100, right?
I'm in love with my own material in that
I
book.
just I just opened it at random and saw from Grace by Diane Ackerman, and I could read that at any time. I could read that in the morning.
Good. Yeah.
And feel uplifted by it. And I mean, I just think it's an extraordinary, and I'm not just saying that because you're my friend and mentor, but I think it's just wonderful. It's wonderful, and every home should have one.
Yes, because there's a lot of joy, but you know, no person escapes loss, whether it's a small loss or a big loss, or the loss of you know, I hate to say, but a pet or whatever, you know, just a little.
Hey, let me just say, this book, I edited, and both Jackie and Monica are in it. They wrote these beautiful, beautiful essays in here.
So lucky.
Anyway, that was 10 years ago, 8 years ago. But yeah, that was
I turned to this week, obviously, you know. Just
and why, Jackie?
Well, you know, my dog died this week. We had to have her laid to rest on Monday, and so it's been a tough week. And what to speak to what you said about, you know, not being able to read and so on today, I literally couldn't do anything. My head was so full of it, and I didn't want to go anywhere near my computer because I didn't even want to click on anything. I ended up repainting the trim in the dining room around the window.
What a great!
I started to say,
and there's something,
good idea.
And you know why? I mean,
good idea.
It was doubly a good idea because there's something very rhythmic, and I think rhythm is something we fall out of when we are going through grief. We fall out of our rhythm. Right. Not only is the person not here, or the pet, or whatever not here, but you don't eat at the normal time because you don't feel well or whatever, and those things. And there's something about the rhythm of painting. And plus, my dad was a master craftsman. He was a what we call in Britain a painter and decorator. So I always try to do these things as he taught me. And I remember he always had a lovely rhythm as he kept the paint alive as he painted.
What a wonderful experience! What a wonderful expression.
I totally get it and I think your book expresses that, and it's for someone who, you know, there is nothing else you can do. You don't want to get stuck into a book, even though you think, oh well, I'll read such and such a thriller because that will distract me. You don't want to be distracted, but it's like, I tell you what it's like. It's like you're in the well, and you know you're in the well, and in fact the well is a good place to be because that's where you're supposed to be. But you know, like and this just came to me, like in a well there are these little handholds or whatever you can get out of it. You can tell I've been in a well.
I was going to say, I hope so.
It's like every poem is a little handhold. It's a little part of the steps that bring you out of a something like a well, a deep dark place. It's a little bit of light in the deep dark place.
That's lovely, and that reminds me too then to ask you, Jackie, about speaking of your dad and the way and the painting. Like, you know, you open the book talking about how if you don't mind my saying, and the people watching don't mind my revealing a little something, is that he goes to get a blood transfusion in his best trousers and his jacket. And he was a man, I fell absolutely in love in a paternal way with your father. And what was it like writing about your mom and your dad? I mean, you know, your mom too, you cherished both of them clearly. And what was that like writing that? Because I know you're used to writing, you know, fiction. And here you were, you really were courageous. You bared your soul.
Well, thank you. I mean, I've always loved memoir. I mean, that's why I joined Barbara's class. Years ago, I
Lucky
wanted
us.
to. It was
Lucky me.
I love just to say how in memoir that the personal can become the universal. But how was it for me to write about my parents? I think there was some. How can I say what's the word? It was like being sometimes, even when some of the memories were very difficult and challenging, it was almost like I was wrapping them around me. I was both trying to wrap my arms around them and get to who they were in our relationship. I felt as if they were wrapping their arms around me. And I had a real sense of, it's okay, Jackie, we know you're a writer, you've got to say what you've got to say. And there was a comfort in that. As an aside, years ago, something my mum said to me, it was when I published The Care and Management of Lies, which was a standalone novel. I got a few pages in and she went, that's it. You can't say a thing around you because it ends up in a book.
I've heard that before.
There was a story from her early days of her marriage, which I actually gave to one of my characters. And so, but it was lovely writing about my dad. And then, but that particular scene was it was a poignant scene. It was a heartfelt scene. And, my dad was a very, as they say, a very dapper man. And in fact, when I went to see the funeral director, after he had gone, and again, I'm thinking of Barbara talking about the words we use, and after he had died, and I and asking the funeral director and taking the suit and everything, he said, "Now, can you do a Windsor knot in the tie?" Because my dad always had a Windsor knot, and he looked at me, the funeral director, said, "Jackie, I was in the Guards. I know how to do a Windsor knot." I went, "Okay, over to you." It was lovely. Yeah.
I love the pictures in it too of your family, because I had heard and I'd read about so much of this, and there they were. And there's your dad and there's your mom. They're drinking a little wine, I think, or they're having a little drink.
We were on where they were that day, and I think that was 2007.
Yeah.
It was my mom's birthday, and we were on a vintage steam train service, which is on, try and give them a little plug in case you're ever in Kent, on the Kent and East Sussex Railway, which is in Tenterden in Kent. And what they do these lovely lunches on the steam-hauled trains. So it's like going back into yesteryear, and that was my mum's birthday in 2007.
Oh,
and it's such a lovely photograph of them both. We love trains in our family.
Yeah,
we do the train. We like the trains.
Oh, that's amazing.
And there's such a lovely picture. Your mom at age 22, and so beautiful, and she really was. That's a beautiful.
She was a looker. She was a looker.
And they're married. Their picture of their wedding. Oh, these are wonderful. It's really looking like it was like looking into your family album, which it was.
Yes,
thank you. Yeah.
And it's interesting because your relationship with your mother is very different than your relationship with your father, and yet you cherish them the same. Like,
yes,
I don't know. That's an awkward way of saying it, but you loved them the same.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I love them very, very much. And yet, relationships are always different, with between a father and mother, between your different parents.
Of course.
But
it made me think about it because Barbara said how beautiful she is, and I think that the both of you are just beautiful. But I don't know what Barbara's parents look like, but I now know what your parents look like. And I know your mother had a hard time when you started being as beautiful as you are. That's what made me think of it,
Yeah, well, I think it was a challenge for her suddenly, having this, 13-year-old who, and I think I said in the book that the day that I think that problem started was when one of my cousins had put a lot of makeup on me, because she was really good at that, and she was older than me, and she was staying, and I think she was a bit bored. She thought, I'll just make up Jackie, and, it's the case of my mum came in, and it was like, very nice, but get that stuff off your eyes before your father gets home, you know.
Oh, that's
And
funny.
it was definitely a turning point because she saw me as a woman.
Was that when she said, but you'll never be as beautiful as your mother?
It was soon after that.
Soon after.
In company.
Oh my gosh.
I don't think I ever would have been either. She was a lovely looking woman, really lovely looking, and tall, about 3 inches taller than me.
Is she 3 inches taller than you?
She was. I mean, in her later years, obviously she wasn't, but she topped out at about 5'9.5", something like that. All the girls in her family were tall, Amazons.
And there were lots of aunts, weren't there too?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
The cousins.
Aunt Sylvie and who else?
Yeah, I have my mum was one of 10, and 3 of them were boys, so the rest were girls. And you know, one of the stories I told was how at family parties, you know, my aunts and my mum would line up, except Auntie Ruby because she lives in Canada. She might even be on this today, who knows. And they'd line up, and actually if Auntie Ruby was over visiting or something, they'd all do it. And literally, you know that song Sisters. I'm not going to sing it because I've got a terrible voice. And they'd high kick their way across the room, you know, like
you talk about in the book that you have a terrible voice. I seriously doubt it. But anyway, we're singing together next time we drink.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible.
So they would always sing that song together?
Yeah. My mum had a lovely voice. She had a good singing voice. So she would get the party going.
Yeah.
She had a really good singing voice.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Barbara.
Yeah.
What is it like in terms of writing, picking, how did you go through? I mean, my gosh, you go through so many years and centuries of writers, and you come up with contemporary writers. And how did you come to settle on the writers that you settled on? Did you have are there 100 people in the book? Is that right?
Yeah, I think there's
I think there
over
are
100.
Yes, over 100.
Yeah.
But that is a remarkable feat, because I was looking through and I was thinking, my gosh, how did you narrow down what you wanted to include?
That was the fun part. I sort of went into a fugue state or a zone. You know, I went through all my books. I have tons of books of poetry and memoir, and I just it was the best part of doing the book because I could just spend days reading, and you know, and I had to have an emotional reaction to a poem. One of the poems in it, Alison Joseph, her husband had just died, and on Facebook she's a poet. Red Hen Press publishes her, and she's a wonderful poet, but she was writing really raw stuff on Facebook. And so I befriended her, and I said I want to publish. You know, I told her what I was doing. So two of her poems are in the book, and I don't know. It was just a delicious time of going through books and looking. What was very difficult, though, was getting all the permissions.
That's what I wondered.
I had to
from the estates, or how did you go about that?
I went to estates, I went to publishers, I went to agents, I went directly. Sometimes I would just Google and try and find writers that way.
So your agent doesn't do any of this. This is all you.
My agent and my publisher didn't do any of that. No, that was, that's my book. And so that's what I did.
Don't know how that worked. I mean, that's amazing.
And it was and I had done, I've done books before. I had done a poetry book years and years ago for kids, and done this. And somehow I thought it would just be a breeze and kind of a project. And it turned into, I'm not good at paperwork and administrative stuff. And I kept thinking of this, somebody's going to read this book and it's going to be helpful to them, and it's going to get them through a bad patch. And I can just sit at this desk and for months and months and do my paperwork.
Well, that's lovely. But that's a way, even now, I mean, not to bring up anything political, but like that, we can give back.
Yeah.
Like you're giving back because you're literally reaching behind you and saying, I've been through it. Now I'm going to hold your hand and bring you through it too.
We all do
That's
that.
a lovely thing.
We all do it. Yeah, that's what writers do. I did some interview this morning, and I got really earnest and sort of, Pollyannish about it. But and then I said, "Oh,
Barbara, really?"
I said, "I'm just sounding like such a, goody two shoes here." But that's what we do. We have these huge messes in our lives, and then we wrap up in words and stories, and give them to
So
people.
so the personal becomes the universal, and
Yeah.
and
Almost always.
Yeah,
and
we
I
all.
think
Yeah.
that's what's lovely about your book. And I know, myself reading memoir and so on. I've read memoirs by people their upbringing is so different from mine, and yet I see a reflection there.
Right.
There is something it's like
There's
looking in a flash of a mirror, and I
Yeah.
can see myself, and I know I'm walking a path that someone else has walked, and there's a comfort. It's the comfort.
Yeah.
The comfort of strangers, if you will.
And C.S. Lewis said, though I always thought he said it, but apparently he didn't say it. Somebody else wrote it in the movie about him. But we read to know that we're not alone. Yeah. And I actually have that in.
He didn't say that?
He didn't say that, but somebody put it in the movie about, the poet. I don't know where it came from, but I have an amazing copy editor, and she said, no.
No, Babs.
And then I have a quote from Anne Lamott, and my copy editor said, she didn't say this. Somebody else said it. So I wrote to Anne Lamott, and I said, I want to use this line. Did you ever say it? Where did you say it? And she wrote back immediately and said, I remember saying it, but I have no idea where. And so then I could use it.
It's yours.
I have that email from Anne Lamott.
I mean, it's hers. Yeah, you could claim it as hers. That's great. Yeah. Oh, so you got to talk to a lot of interesting writers then.
I did. I have pen pals now, amazing pals. Because sometimes I didn't know who owned the rights to something, and lots of really wonderful. And sometimes I would look far and wide to find out, to reach them, and sometimes it took one took up almost a year to find, and I found her.
Oh, what a fun! Oh,
yeah.
Should be a private detective,
Yeah, it's a lot of detective work. Yeah, but yeah.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And Jackie, I want to ask you something. Is it time for Q&A?
Oh, you can ask your question to Jackie.
Oh, okay. Well, this is just so great, and it's really out of context completely, but it's just too wonderful a story, Jackie, about how your parents bought a caravan. A gypsy
good
caravan.
Yeah, it was when they were.
And it's in the book. It's a brilliant.
They were married in 19. It's in the book, and I'll skip over some of the details because I don't want to give them all, I guess. But post-war London. In fact, just to give you an idea of how bad post-war London must have been in the 1940s and 50s, even. They didn't get rid of the last bomb sites until they built the arenas for the 2012 Olympics around the East End of London. That's how long it took to get rid of the final bomb sites. I remember when I was a kid, and we're talking in the sort of early 60s, I'd play with my cousins on bomb sites in London when we went up there. So my parents, there wasn't anywhere to live for a young couple. It was really hard. And they couldn't find anywhere to live, and then and there's a whole story about that. But then my mother saw an advertisement in the paper, in the classifieds, for a gypsy caravan for sale, and they borrowed the money and they bought it, and they phoned the farmer that my dad knew in Kent, where and my mum was working at the telephone exchange, so she could make the phone calls, where my father's parents and grandparents had gone hop picking, because that's another cultural thing I talk about. And he said, well, yeah, if you can get down here, you've got the hop picking, and then we've got apple picking, and so on and so forth. And, you'll have some work for a while. So, and you can put the caravan down here. So they got it taken down. Someone with a lorry took it down there. And they lived in basically their living space was 8 foot by 5 foot. And they lived in that caravan for a number of years. they later put a tent next to it, and it would have been what's called a bender tent, which was a type of gypsy tent. They lived right next to gypsies with their caravans, and the word vardo is the sort of what the Romani will call their caravans. And the bender tent is made of hazel branches and a tarp thrown over. And there's a whole story about how my father burned theirs down, which is really fun.
You have to read it.
But they had this life, which I truly think helped them, particularly my mum, leave the war behind. All the bombings in London, which I know, the memories of seeing dead after bombings and so on and so forth just haunted her. It really did haunt her. And I think that gave her leave to just live a different kind of carefree life. And so there's some great photographs of them working on the farm. And in fact, that's later they were in what was called a tied cottage, but that's the same farm where I was born. I was born in hospital, but where I came home to.
Were you right?
So it's a whole lovely story. And anyone who's ever read my book, Elegy for Eddie, and a lot of people said, how do you know about the culture of gypsies and so on? I said, well, it's in my history somewhere. My parents got that from my mum and dad.
Literally.
There's a whole story about my parents' connection to them and the families they held in very high regard, so yeah. It's and there was always, in my parents, there was always that, I think, in their soul after that they were always up for something. They were always ready to. They lived a very solid life later on, but they were always up for traveling and things like that.
Would you say they were free of fear because they were able to change like that and move like that, or was there?
I think actually they were. I think my mother in particular was very fearful.
Oh, okay.
She was, and a lot of that came from other experiences she had as a child. But she had great fears about losing the house, which were unfounded, really. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe early on they weren't, but anyway, and always fearful about what might happen next, and that's why my dad's words always helped us. I'd see him, as I say, put his arm around and say, never mind, love, this time next year we'd be laughing. And it would get her over that hump of worrying about, we haven't got any money or whatever.
And that goes with Barbara's book too, that like, it wasn't your first year, I'm sure. And I know from knowing you that that kind of loss, it terrifies me. I've been married 25 years, almost 26. And the idea of something happening, but this time next year we'll be laughing. I mean, in a way, and then the language of loss, and somehow we all ended up here and connected.
Yeah,
it seems.
Yeah.
Should we do
it's really lovely. It's a lovely friendship. It's a lovely friendship.
We're so lucky.
It's so special. It is such a special friendship, and
And we met at a time when at least Jackie and I, we were just, Jackie had been published, but I hadn't. And we were very, we were newbies and you were just such a mentor, Barbara. And I teach all my classes. I'm like, I only teach one class. I sound like I have 20 classes, but I teach my class or whatever class or workshop I'm teaching. I say, do I mind mentioning Barbara Abercrombie too much?
Yeah.
Well, guys, you walked in with all your talent, for God's sake.
Well, I had serious at the time, second book blues. I thought, I'd published one book and I thought, okay, they want another book. I am going to be found out now. They will know that I have absolutely no idea what I'm knowing.
Well, listen, all you writers out there that are listening, listen to this New York Times bestseller say, I'm always afraid I'm going to be found out, and keep writing.
Yes.
If you're a writer, you're a writer.
You just got to get on with it. You just got to get on.
And you're a writer. If you write, you're a writer. It's not a.
Yeah.
You say
this time next year, you'll have a manuscript.
Exactly. Okay, so Rira, should we do the questions?
We have a couple here. So I'm going to read the one that reached the top, and it's for Barbara. Has your book changed how you've responded recently to friends who are grieving? If so, how?
The book, I think just having gone through that loss causes me to respond differently, I think. That not trying to fix it or make somebody feel better. I think if you've gone through life, you just need to be, I know I needed to talk. And I mean, I sounded like a crazy person half the time, but I just had to, close friends, I just had to talk and talk. And so I think I listen more instead of trying to fix somebody's life.
Well, you're very honest about it, I'll say too, because you say in your introduction, you say he died. I didn't lose him in the parking lot. He didn't pass somewhere. And then I missed him while he was passing. He's dead, which sounds very harsh the way I'm saying it. It's beautifully written, but it's like, you know what? I can't find him. Yeah.
And one of the essays, she said, he's in one of the excerpts, she said, a writer says, I didn't lose him. He's gone. So, yeah.
I almost wish I had the book to give. I had the book years ago to give to my mum after my dad died. I mean, they were married 64 years, and they were sort of joined at the hip, and she lost every hair on her head in the first year after he died. I mean, her hair just fell out. She really did her best to try and put her best foot forward, and she was a voracious reader. All my mum's family were voracious readers, but she truly loved poetry. She loved the rhythm of poetry. She loved everything about it. She loved verse, and I really wish, because 7 Quick Ways to Get Over Grief was not going to do it for her, but this she would have held onto as if it were that lifeline. She truly would have. I know. I think that's why it's touched me so deeply, and I've got all my Post-its in there. But it's a remarkable book.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
All right. Our next question is from Jacqueline. For Jacqueline. Are you writing another book for Macy Dobbs? Do you know how many more you'll write for this series?
Okay. So there is another one, and it's actually in pre-production right now, and it's coming out on March the 23rd, but that might not be the exact date, but it's towards the end of March, and it is called The Consequences of Fear.
And it's this March. She did a memoir in the fall and a Maisie Dobbs.
March 2021. And, I sort of do know how many books there are going to be, but I'm not saying. That's for me to know and everyone else to find out one by one.
We can't wait.
Yeah. Thank you.
And this is a question for Barbara, and it's from Allison. How can I use writing to restore me when I am grief adjacent? So grief adjacent.
How can you use writing to grief adjacent, meaning next to grief to?
I think that's what they meant.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How can you use writing? I think, I keep a journal, which I've been writing in for God knows how many years. And I think just the act of writing, and it's been proven, it's really therapeutic. And I think if you, just writing, if in the beginning you just vent, and in a journal you just vent. And the only rule I tell my students about that they have for their journals is that they never show them to anybody, because if you're writing to show somebody, then it gets all self-conscious. But I think you write your way through, and then if you if you have an urge to turn it into a poem or an urge to turn it into a story, then you write an essay or you write a memoir. I'm writing a memoir now about what actually happened the year before my husband's death. Mm. And I mean, that's taking me, 5.5 years so far, and it's not finished yet. But in the beginning, I think writing in a journal, venting, and just letting it come out without any kind of self-consciousness or self-criticism, but just pouring it out on the page. I have found, and I think a lot of people have found, is, well, do you guys agree? I mean, do you have,
actually, I can add something to that. When my mum was in intensive care, and she was in a hospital, obviously in Britain, and before you can go in to see the person who is in intensive care, you had to wait in a waiting room. It's a bit controlled, just as it is here. And so I was sitting there with my brother, and you're very nervous. You're seeing someone who is in a very poor state of health. And I looked up at the notice board, and there on the notice board it said, if you're in this waiting room, then you're worried about someone. You may be grieving, and it's this, you may be tense, and you may want to talk. Please let us know if you'd like to talk to someone, because we have people that will sit and listen to you. And then it said, it also helps to write. And if you like, please ring this bell and tell the nurse, and she will bring you a fresh notebook and a pen so that you can write.
Fantastic! Wow.
Yeah, and so I think that's a clue that if people, and I actually took a photograph of that sign, because I thought, I think that is absolutely brilliant. This is not some private fancy hospital. This was just an ordinary National Health hospital with all these things that they could do to help you as a loved one. Wow. Having said that, there is that sense there that if they look after the loved ones, that's someone else they keep out of hospital. But the fact they said, we will bring you a notebook and a pen, and if you want to talk to someone, and so I said to the nurse, do many people ask for this? Because I think this is great. And she said, you would be surprised. She said, we have a stash of notebooks, and she said, we will, and they're just little, the sort of little notebooks you buy with a clutch of pages. You wouldn't write your life story in there, but just to write down your thoughts and feelings. I thought it was wonderful. So perhaps that helps as well. It does. What you're writing doesn't have to be a big, massive undertaking. It just needs to be your thoughts right then and there, and it doesn't even have to be joined up sentences. Sometimes just words.
Yeah.
What a great reminder.
All right, I think we have time for one last question, and I think this is a good one to end on. It's from Victoria. What is your next project?
Yeah.
Who for?
It's for both of you.
Okay. And Monica, I want to hear Monica answer that.
No.
My next project is, I have 2 books in my memoir is my ongoing project, and then I'm also teaching a master class at UCLA in memoir, and I'm so excited about it. I have 8 amazing students in it, and we're doing it virtually and also on an online platform. So I'm doing a lot of more writing. Usually I just, you know this, Monica, you go walk into the classroom and maybe you've had, half an hour to sort of think about what you're going to say. But I am really doing a lot of on canvas writing for this class, and I'm going to do it. My project will be a book on writing your story, memoir, and personal essays.
Oh my gosh. I just found that out. I'm so excited.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Oh, this is
let's go.
More books for the students. Oh, I'm so excited. Yeah. And Jackie.
I have a book in pre-production, which means I've got to be checking galleys and all that kind of thing. I've got an essay that I have to write on a deadline for, and it's actually about the county of Kent and how it's been a frontline county in Kent ever since the Romans, before the Romans invaded. I mean, if anyone's going to invade England, they go through Kent, We're used to being invaded, and
we're used to it. Funny. Just have a sandwich.
Everybody's had a go at us. And it's just the Vikings. That's what they did. Never mind the Saxons. We've been done by them a few times. And then I'm actually already starting to research, just doing some background work for when I say a standalone novel, I mean not in my series novel. So
Jackie, do you think you'll do another memoir, or do you know yet?
At this, I could write an awful lot, but it's whether I choose to at this point.
I'm going to be begging.
I left out a lot of stories I would like to have. I had to be choosy about my stories because I have a lot of stories about my family. But it's, you know, I mean, everybody has family stories, but then you think, well, what's going to resonate?
Not like your family, Jackie.
Yeah. We don't have gypsy
We don't have gypsy caravans
in our family.
I tell you, I must admit, I think my family are pretty pretty amazing, challenging
and
at times.
Eccentric, but you know what's amazing about them is that you love each other so much, and it can be chaotic and very hard work, but so we want more of it. And when people read this book, they're going to want another book. I want another memoir. Not that matters so much that I want it, but I'm going to be begging you.
Oh, it does, Monica, it does. I'm writing just for you.
Back to heads,
Monica, we want your next book.
Yes.
No,
yes. Thank you.
I'm doing that. No, the sequel to Driving with Dead People is finally going to come out, and it's called The Mortician's Funeral.
And when is it?
Yes, when?
Next fall, we're thinking, but we don't know for sure. I have no idea exactly if that'll be that, but that's what I'm praying for. So I haven't, I don't know yet.
So we'll be back here again to interrogate you then?
Yes.
Great.
Jackie and I will interview you.
Oh, she's gonna stop us now. Look, I can see.
Okay.
Well, we'll love to have you again.
Will you invite us back?
Of course.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Barbara, Jackie, and Monica for this wonderful talk. And thank you to everyone who tuned in tonight. I know we had people from California to Texas, like all over the place. So thank you so much. Pennsylvania. So thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. And also thank you for the thoughtful questions.
I can see them here, yeah.
Yeah. If you would like to purchase a copy of either of the featured books tonight, just click on the green purchase button directly below the viewer's screen. It will take you to our website where you can complete your purchase. And also, if you would like to re-watch this talk or you know someone who couldn't make it tonight, there will be a replay available using the same link. And it should be up within an hour. So, just look out for that.
That's good to know. Okay.
And
that's before we know our next president. It'll be up.
Well, I think that about wraps it up. For more virtual events, just check out our website. We'll have everything listed on our calendar. But stay safe, everyone, and take care of yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mira. Thank you to Romans, too.
See you, Monica. Bye, Barbara.
Bye. I love you guys.
Thank you.